Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Rabyd, a former pastor turned atheist, now a compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and join the Rabyd Nation. If you want to learn more about the mission of this channel to normalize deconversion and atheism and how to support that, stay to the end of the video to learn more. Today I am reacting to a video entitled Why Atheists Don't Get It in 5 minutes by a small YouTuber named Papa Dale and the Bandit. I want to know specifically what it is I don't get and why I don't get it. But given the description, I'm going to guess this is a production that is more of a Bible study, a short one, for believers and how their atheist friends and neighbors just don't get it. But take it away, Papa Dale.
Hi, friends. I'm retired pastor and theologian Papa Dale. Today's Bible Quick is Why Atheists Just Don't Get It. I hope to teach you something that you might not have known before, but please listen and be skeptical and check me and any other Bible teacher out in comparison to what the Bible actually says.
Hi there, Papa Dale. I'm Rabyd, the Rabyd Atheist, a former minister myself of 20 years and an atheist theologian with degrees in Bible and theology. But I noticed that your Facebook says that you have like 4 advanced degrees, including a PhD. So I'm probably out of my league, but, oh, wait. It says on your Facebook page that every single degree you get is from a Bible Institute like Moody or a seminary like St. Luke's. So pretty heavily religiously influenced education there. I'm going to say that's okay, but for the purpose of studying atheists and what they don't get, it might be worth something akin to your backdrop, which is a facade of books and not real ones. But you can bet I will be checking your work here against not only the Bible, but what against the reality, which your degrees being very specifically Christian and seminary-based doesn't have a good handle on. That said, we'll continue to go on through this and see if you have anything to say that really genuinely says that I'm an atheist, and what is it that I don't get?
So let's look at the topic today, why atheists don't get it. The foundation of Christian theism is the life of Christ, his fulfillment of prophetic predictions, his life, death, burial, physical resurrection, and his post-resurrection life, eyewitnessed by over 500 people. See 1 Corinthians 15, 1 through 8.
I would say the foundation of Christian theism is the resurrection of Christ, but I would agree that Jesus being a historical person is key to that. But let's take your points one by one. Number one, it is easy to post-hack a fulfillment of prophecy, especially when you're using oral transmitted stories about Jesus and putting them together decades later. It's easy for me as someone who has written stories to take some of the words the character said a few chapters earlier in the book and make them prophetic by writing the story that later fulfills them. That doesn't mean that Jesus fulfilled prophecies, but that the Gospels are written to look like he did, and some of the connections drawn between the prophecy and Jesus is pretty thin at best. Number two, there is only scanty base that Jesus was a real person outside the Gospels, but I will concede that there is one attested source. But there is also, a sense, more evidence for Socrates than Jesus in historical literature, so it's not great evidence, but let's concede that Jesus historically existed just for the sake of the rest of the discussion. Number three, I can easily, like Paul, say the same thing about a lot of mythology that Paul uses. If I were to claim that someone told me 500 witnesses, including Eric the Red and Leif Erikson, claimed to have seen Odin hanging upside down from the world tree Yggdrasil for 9 days in order to get the runes to forestall Ragnarok, would you ask the most obvious question? What are their names? And secondly, did they write anything down themselves about it? And is it something that I can verify with others without colluding with them? If you would rightly ask these things of me, and why are you not asking these same questions about Paul's claims? Who are these 500 witnesses? Did they write anything down? Can anything be attested to from a historical standpoint? Anybody can write down that 500 witnesses saw something. That's not proof of anything. It is intellectually vacant to not use the same kind of criticism you would use against my story against Paul's. But all he is really doing is reciting something that he heard. That's hearsay, and so is my story, and it wouldn't be allowed in court for obvious reasons, and neither would Paul's testimony. For your audience, this might be convincing because they already believe, but for me, I've already looked at this stuff extensively in my time in seminary, Bible college, and 20 years of ministry and 40 years in the faith. And there's good reason to doubt all of this being even factually true at all.
For Christians, the verifiability of this event justifies Christ's claim to be Yahweh, the Creator. You see, Yahweh introduced himself to humankind through Moses, predicted that he would come in the flesh as a man at a later time. About 1,500 years later, he identified that he was that same Creator God Yahweh in the person of Jesus Christ. So, let's see. For Christians, the verifiability of this event justifies his claim to be Yahweh the Creator.
If I am reading you here right, you are saying that his resurrection proves he was Yahweh the Creator. The resurrection actually doesn't do that. The fact that Jesus himself raised 3 people from the dead, usually by God's power, what does that prove then about them? That they were somehow former life sons of God in the angelic sense? And what about all the people that were raised from the dead by God's power at the moment of Jesus' death in Matthew 27? The tombs broke open and the temple veil was ripped from top to bottom. These would be extraordinary events, but no one outside the book of Matthew records them, and I suspect the bill for the temple veil being repaired would be impressive, but that hasn't survived either. But to these dead people, what does that say about them? Apparently nothing, because Christian theology has a more myopic view about Jesus as it's a presupposition, particularly when it comes to the resurrection. But the resurrection proves something about Jesus. All these other people being resurrected by God's power, just as he will be in the story, should say something similar about them. But Christian theology in general ignores them and what it says about them. The point is that not even biblical proof of who Jesus was, because there seems to be a lot of resurrections and not just Jesus's.
Now, several New Testament scholars, very highly educated people, notably Gerd Ludemann and Bart Ehrman, have agreed to the historic veracity of the events of the life of Christ. And in the notes, you can see a link to the video in which that is demonstrated. Now, yes, those men continued to be atheists, but ones who cannot explain how a man can raise himself from the dead in this way using known naturalistic means. So what they do is they assign it to the realm of the mystery of the not yet known. It's the atheism's version of the atheism of the gap.
What?
Well, firstly, to use these 2 men as proof of your points is a little bit of a stretch. One, they only say it was possible that Jesus existed and run with that assumption to explain certain things to a certain extent, something many others of the atheist camp disagree with them on to varying degrees. So citing them isn't proof of any point you're trying to make, only that they agree with you that Jesus existed. I know for sure that Bart doesn't believe in the resurrection at all because of the lack of evidence for it. He isn't saying that he doesn't know what happened, but more specifically that it didn't happen. So you're misrepresenting Bart Ehrman for sure. What you're doing is extending what Bart Ehrman says about the historicity of Jesus in a place that he would not go, okay? You're trying to say that, yes, because they acknowledge that Jesus was a historical person and some of the events might have taken place, that somehow they're also endorsing the resurrection of Jesus Christ, and that is simply not true. That's a complete misrepresentation. Sorry, in the end, you are engaging God of the gaps. People say we don't know, and you want to slide, then it must be a miracle and Jesus rose from the dead. I really don't think this is funny because it's another attempt to reverse the burden of proof, which still lays with you to prove Jesus actually rose from the dead. So far you failed to do that, and so what you want to say is, so when the atheist says, I don't know, you want to claim that that's atheism of the gaps. No, it's just an honest answer. Okay, we don't really know what happened there. No, it's not atheism of the gaps, it's God of the gaps. Because you think there is no other explanation, it must be the resurrection. But there are plenty of other possible narratives that exist that are perfectly reasonable that don't require miracles. But you dismiss most of these as with a hand waving in your comment, because there are a lot of explanations given from, say, post-traumatic hallucinogenic experiences, like those often experienced by some people when people they love die, to the embellishment over time by the oral tradition, to creative license of the great gospel writers, or more likely a combination of all the above. Plus, there are many more, and I have never actually seen theists deal with any of these other possibilities very much or very often. They often hand-wave them away and try to make it into a false dichotomy, which you just did, and then claim it's atheism of the gaps to say we don't know what happened there for sure. Okay, that's not what's going on here. What you're saying is, well, if nobody knows, it must be the resurrection. That's God of the gaps, not atheism of the gaps. Just like you did with atheism of the gaps statement, a lot of people do this, and you're just becoming no exception. Also, the link in the video you gave is one of your own videos where I agree with one of the comments on it. The evidence presented here is ridiculous, and there's more evidence for Doctor Who than Jesus. You say these scholars say Jesus arose, but that is not the case. You put that in there, and it's very dishonest. Why didn't you put that in the video that you're saying so in the video here? Oh, because it doesn't exist. I mean, why didn't you just show a video in that video of Bart Ehrman and whoever else you quoted here, which I don't even recognize their name? Why didn't you put in there them talking and admitting that the resurrection happened? But you didn't do that. So it's not a very honest video, to be quite frank. Oh, you didn't put all those quotes in there because you know that they don't exist, and you really know that. You are counting on the gullibility of your followers to not look it up. It's not funny, sir. It's lies and propaganda, and you should be ashamed of yourself from trying to play the reverse card on me, the atheist, with the burden of proof, which has still not been met by you.
This illustrates the point as follows. After 1900 years of debate, there are no new arguments on either side, either atheist or theist.
What?
The impasse comes down to worldview. Which worldview are you going to believe? And the worldview that a person believes is a preconceived assumption, whether you're atheist or theists.
No, even the atheist or the theist can't be a worldview on their own. Just believing in God or not cannot be turned into a full-fledged worldview. That requires a lot more, including, but not a complete list, what is the nature of humanity, where do we come from, morality, plus many other things make up a person's worldview. Believing in God or not doesn't satisfy all these things and can be part of your worldview, but cannot be a worldview in and of it themselves. So your whole premise as a part of the discussion is faulty here right out the gate. The issue between atheism and theism is purely the God claim, nothing more, nothing less. Also, the issue is not an assumed belief or not. What evidences are given to a belief and whether or not can be verified are also factors. Faith-based claims lack verification all the time and have alternative explanations. You're oversimplifying the problem, Popperdale, because worldviews require more than an understanding about God, and you're not acknowledging that some beliefs can have more evidence behind them than others. These two things actually make everything you say at this point overly simplistic to what actually the problem is.
You assume that the world is either all naturalistic, like Carl Sagan said, the cosmos is all there is, was, or ever will be, or you assume that the Bible was accurate when it said in Genesis 1, in the beginning God created.
This actually illustrates the issue of one having more evidence than the other. I would ask you, does the cosmos exist and can we experiment and test on it? Yes, we can. The answer from you would be yes, of course so. And the atheist side is also yes. So there's little argument actually that the material world actually exists from either side. The theist agrees with Carl Sagan, but wants to add something that requires further proof, that God created it as a separate claim, and that hasn't been verified at all. That requires you to prove it. Carl Sagan's only claim that it would be nullified is that he didn't believe it was created, but all of us agree that it exists. That's not belief, that's established fact. The question is, did God do this or not? You're framing this in a way to believe that one worldview or another, but you already believe in part of the naturalistic worldview, not an atheist idea. You just want to explain it with God, but you have to justify your use of God of the gaps to fill it, not just assume it.
The one you choose to believe is the one that informs the content of your belief. Now, theists believe in a bifurcated reality, physical and metaphysical. Atheists believe in a monistic reality of materialism only. The only way that we will ever agree is that one of us must change our worldview. Atheists believe that would require a theist's rejection of a metaphysical fantasy idea. Theists believe that requires the atheist to reject materialism only as true. And we will never agree.
You're probably right, but not for the reasons that you believe. You want to say, I believe in this the same way you believe. Firstly, not all atheists are materialists. That is a continued apologist falsehood. Some do believe in a spiritual nature to the universe, so your dichotomy use is a false one for starters. But you assume that the evidence is inclusive with both sides. But the evidence of dual reality for spirituality and physical that you claim that theists hold is still not verified. But a natural universe, which is something we can prove exists, so the naturalist has their proof. What you have is not proven on the spiritual side. And I would say that goes for the spiritualist atheists as well, though they're not trying to convince me to follow Jesus. I can prove the materialist world exists and can get answer for real problems using science and medicine that are predictable. What you have in contrast with your beliefs, a lot of claims with very little evidence behind them, sometimes no evidence at all. That's a huge difference in what justifies or separates our beliefs.
We cannot even reasonably discuss the proposition. We speak past each other. The Christian Bible refers to it in this way. The natural person does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are folly to him, and he's not able to understand them because they are spiritually discerned. 1 Corinthians 2:14. It is the spiritual emptiness in the theist that prevents understanding. This is described in John chapter 3 by Jesus' dialogue with Nicodemus. Jesus said, quote, "You must be born again." He said, even a lifelong, highly knowledgeable religious scholar like Nicodemus could not understand because, like a broken satellite dish, he had no working spiritual receiver. Atheists don't get it because they can't receive it. Now listen up. This is important. Leave your comments below, and I'll be happy to address them.
So the reason I don't get it is I don't have the spiritual receiver to receive it. Basically, you're saying that I will never get it. I mean, this doesn't speak well of your God because he's basically not giving some people the capacity to know him in the first place. Then he is going to condemn them to hell for something he didn't provide. This despite the fact that in the 1 Timothy it is said that God has this desire for all people to be saved. It seems then that he would have provided this spiritual receiver to guarantee that this would happen. So, given this is a little Bible study of yours for a Christian audience, not me the atheist, what are you trying to do here? Build up the pride in your followers and the fact that they have something that atheists do not? Build up their hubris themselves as Christians because they know something that other people don't? That they have the ability to know and understand things other people do not? Why they believe and others don't? This is how you keep people indoctrinated, by stroking the ego. And Paul either knew that in 1 Corinthians 2 or he was a victim of this pride of self and passed it on. It's a claim of knowledge that others do not have because God has given it to you and not to them. This is contradictory, actually, to Romans 1:18 and 20, where Paul says everybody knows that there's a God and just acts in defiance. This is one of the many places that Paul contradicts himself in his own theology. It's almost like he knew who he was writing to with each letter and changed his theology accordingly depending on the letter, something that I've maintained for quite some time. That said, I would ask you to prove this claim of special knowledge. And how and why do you think you have it and I don't? Don't use the Bible tells us so. But I also have one other beat. How the heck do you think this is an effective attitude in reaching the lost atheist? You basically default to, we will never agree. But how is this not basically saying, I know something you don't know, like a child in a playground going to get to people to accept what you're saying? It's childish. From an evangelistic point of view, you should probably keep those beliefs to yourself, but it's kind of hard given they're published in every Bible, isn't it? I mean, recently I had a comment in a video about when I posted that this is the video I was going to react to on my channel. I had a commenter just come in and say, yeah, when I was an atheist, I didn't get it. And then I became a theist, and now I get it. My response to that would have been something along the lines of this, but another commenter, somebody who supports the channel, beat me to it. Says, yeah, I used to be a theist, and I didn't get it. But then I became an atheist, and now I get it. See, this is the real problem with the I don't get it, and I do get it now. I could argue the same, that the reason that you don't get it as a theist is because you think certain things are good evidence when they're not. And you think that certain things are true when they can't be verified. See, when you really get down to it, it's all it comes down to this emotional hubris that somehow you've arrived at some sort of knowledge. And atheists don't play that game. We pull out evidence. And this isn't really a very good way to argue because we can go around in circles and have a lot of fun with this. But this isn't really a good way to open up good discussion either. Okay, I'm going to go off script here and have a little personal message to Pastor Dale if he ever watches this. Bro, I feel sorry for you. Okay, I used to be like you. I used to be very much like you. I have the degrees too. I don't have a PhD, but when I looked at your creds for it, I don't know. But in any case, I would say that, sir, you have self-indoctrinated yourself your entire life. And it's not a question of whether or not you have the truth or whether you have knowledge that I don't possess. The question is, now that you're retired, I would say that the real reason you believe is because you put a lot of time, money, and energy into this belief. And because of, sunk cost fallacy, you don't want to give it up. I know, I used to be like you. I used to sit in the pulpit and say, I've done all this stuff. I've been a minister all this time. I've invested so much of my education into spiritual stuff and theology and Bible. Man, I really need to stick with this. But eventually my intellectual integrity won out, and I paid a heavy price for that when I first decided to leave the faith. And slowly but surely, I'm kind of giving my life back on my feet. But I can see why you don't want to give this up. I understand it. But at the same time, if you're going to do this, you need to stop doing the tropes of, I know something you don't know.
I know something you don't know.
And you need to get rid of all the childish attitude about this. You're laughing in certain spots where I know you're misrepresenting the scholarship. Bart Ehrman and company do not believe in the resurrection. And for you to say that somehow whatever they're saying proves it, that's just dishonest. That's just not true. And, if you're going to give me a link to the proof that this is the case, don't make it a link to your own speech for 20 minutes about why you think that these scholars do this. It was kind of dishonest. So I'm not trying to be rude here, but if you're going to be an apologist, at least be an honest one and actually deal with the scholarship and why you don't disagree. But the real problem with your end statement here is you put yourself on this higher plane because so-and-so know God. It seems very strange for God to do that, sir. So I don't have any anger towards you, sir, but some of the things you did with this video and with your other video were very dishonest, and I think you need to fix that. Okay, you're misrepresenting some scholars here because they don't say what you think they say or don't imply what you think they imply. And no, it's not an atheism of the gaps. You're still God of the gapsing and then trying to project it on atheism. We say, well, we really don't know what happened there in the time of the resurrection of Jesus Christ because we don't have any good information. That's just an honest answer. That doesn't give you the right to come in here and run along with your resurrection story, particularly when there are many, many other alternatives that don't require anything, no miracles, nothing. So, Papa Dale, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible, but if you were trying to win atheists, this is not the way I would instruct theists to go about it. It's one thing I've often told you, don't use Romans 18 through 20, and don't use this passage in 1 Corinthians 2 either as an evangelistic technique. The only thing you'll do with an atheist at that point is say, well, you don't know what's in my brain, and two, how do you know you have this special knowledge? What evidence do you provide for it? And in both cases, I know that you can't do anything, so there's that. Well, I'm going to leave it off here. This is a fun little reaction I did because I see this all the time. For those of you in my audience now, I see this all the time. I'm not picking on Papa Dale here because I see videos like this all the time from apologists and people of faith and former ministers that are still ministers and so on and so forth. They can't seem to accept the fact that atheists are not going to accept their claim that they have special knowledge, and they don't seem to be able to have the ability to understand that just because we say I don't know something about something, that doesn't mean you get to throw the resurrection. It doesn't mean you get to throw God into that, okay? It doesn't mean that at all. And some of them just can't seem to get that there's some basic things that you can't do philosophically. And it's sad that somebody with so much formal education from, Moody Bible Institute and St. Luke's, but formal education nonetheless, didn't philosophically realize that this was a problem, but instead thinks it's okay to argue this way. It seems strange that somebody with so much education is arguing like a bachelor's level person who's just come out of Bible college with all the trope responses and apologetic responses. And it seems like there would be something more than that, but they really don't have anything more. They just keep going around the circles. So, but I'd be interested to hear what you all think about Mr. Papadale in the comments, and, just let me know what you think. But as always, thanks for every like, share, and subscribe. You guys are awesome. There's a lot of good ways to support the channel, from super thanks to super likes to, I even have super stickers, I think, somewhere around here. You also can give directly through PayPal, and hopefully there'll be some other methods that you can support the channel with very soon. But mostly, if you really want to support the channel on a very consistent basis, become a member. This is true for any content creator. It does more than the ad revenue ever will hope to, and it gives that creator a knowledge that they're doing the right thing and the things you want. And so I also want to give a shout out to my members, to my citizens, to my Rabyd citizens, and to my tribunes. Thank you very much for your support. You guys are awesome. I appreciate every single one of you. And as always, live your best life. You only get one go around and then it's over. So you want to take all your time, money, and opportunities and give them to yourself, to the people you love and care for, and to make this a better world. And don't waste them on the trappings of religion and faith. You'll be happier if you do so. Trust me, I speak from experience. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.